Hello, Pre-Calc Nation. We are back with section 1.3, solving equations. Now, for the most part, this should be a nice review. If anything is new here, please make sure we talk in class to make sure that you're not missing any other kind of fundamental aspects. Okay, so first thing is domain and range. Domain are your x values. So if I look at this graph, see this arrow here, down here, it goes up. It's going to hit every x value in the end. There's no restriction. So how we like to write it, domain, negative infinity to positive infinity. Make sure you put parentheses there, no brackets with infinity. Then range is your y values. So looking here, this arrow says it's going to go up and hit all these y values, all here. But this point right here is actually the smallest y value it will be. Nothing is going to happen down here in the graph. So we know the smallest y value is -1 with a bracket because it's 8 point, we're including it to infinity. That's a nice parabola. Then on our next one, we have this rational graph with exponents in the denominator. X values are actually being restricted by these dotted lines called asymptotes. We'll get super close to them, but you'll actually never be able to cross them. Looking at your x values, this arrow says you'll be everywhere over here, negative infinity, and you'll get really close to -3, but you actually will not touch it. So domain, starting as you read left to right, negative infinity, super close to -3 with a parenthesis because you actually will not touch it. Then, starting again, right after -3, you're going to keep going. Oh, we're going to get super close to 2, but we won't actually cross it. So then you'll do parenthesis, -3 to 2. And then we have one more group, which is right after 2 to infinity. It will go on forever. So 2 to infinity. Then the range. The range is the y values. It's kind of hard to tell here, but there is going to be an asymptote right here. Think back to your Algebra 2 days. It will actually not cross there, which means we'll have all the y values down here, all the y values up here. It just can't be 0. How we write that is just negative infinity to 0, parenthesis, 0 to infinity. Always write left to right and down to up. Our last one here is a nice square root function. Here is the starting point, and it's going to go on forever based on that arrow. So the domain, the smallest x value it will be is -3. It will go on forever. The range, the smallest y value is 2, and it will go up forever. Now, those are based on the graph. What if I just gave you the equation to look at? Well, look at this to here and kind of look at the graph. Stuff should be jumping out to you. The fact that this is -3 on the inside actually tells you move right 3. That -2 tells you down 2. And that would be that vertex point, similar to this point in the graph above. Well, in this graph above, it was to the right 2, down 1, and look at what our domain and range were, respectively. It's going to be very similar. The domain for this parabola will still be negative infinity to infinity. It will go on forever. The range will start at the lowest point. Well, the lowest point is that vertex, which is at 3, -2. -2 to infinity. It has to be that y value because y is range. Our next equation, well, look at that. Matches up here and here, but now just with different numbers in the denominator. -2 turned out to be the asymptote at +2. +3 turned out to be the asymptote at -3. So notice it just flips the sign. So domain, our first asymptote will be -4 because it will be the opposite here. Remember, it's parenthesis because you're going to get really close, but you won't cross it. Then you'll have from -4 all the way to +1, opposite, and then 1 to infinity. I apologize. Range, just like the other rational function, will be -infinity to 0, that asymptote in the middle, and 0 to infinity. Take a moment, see if you can figure out this next one based on the equation here and here. Hopefully you paused it, you tried it. These should be your answers for domain and for range. If you didn't get that, please ask during class. Next little review is solving linear equations. Here, we're just going to talk about some mistakes that people make and make sure we don't make them ourselves. So number 1, or number A, 3 bracket 1 minus 2 x plus 1 equals 2 minus x. Okay, we have to think of PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, which means the first step we do is distribute our -2. We're starting in the innermost parenthesis. So we have 3, 1, -2 times x is -2x minus 2. Everything else stays the same. Now we're going to combine like terms in the bracket. 1 minus 2 can be combined to -1. Everything else stays the same. And then now we can distribute our 3 from the outside. We're working our way out. -3 minus 6x. Make sure we combined our x's to one side. So if I add x to both sides, if I add 3 to both sides, divide, x would be -1. Part B, solve ax plus b equals c, where a and b and c are constants. So when it tells you to solve, it's asking for x if it doesn't specify. So here we want to get x. Yes, we have variables instead of numbers, but hey, same idea. You want to undo PEMDAS going the reverse order. First thing you do, subtract over b. Then divide by a. We got x by itself. The answer has variables in it, but hey, we got x by itself, and that's what we wanted. Next, part C here. Many ways to do this, so if you have a way that works very well for you, please stick with that. I'm just showing options for students that might have never seen this, or maybe an option that is better than the way you learned it. Okay, first thing you have to notice is that there are variables in the bottom. You have to already notice x cannot be -5 or +3, otherwise the denominators would be 0. I like to just write that right at the beginning. Cannot be these two answers. Once I do all my math, if I get one of those answers, I have to cross it off. Well, what I like to look at is first, this denominator needs to be factored because I have to figure out my least common denominator. This stays the same. Just factoring that denominator. Hopefully you see it's x plus 5, x minus 3, a little factor review. And now we can notice our least common denominator is x plus 5, x minus 3. If I decide that this is the method I want to do, I can multiply by that least common denominator to each term, both sides of this equal sign. Well, when I do that, my first distribution here, this x plus 5 will cancel with this x plus 5. The reason why I'm doing it, stuff will cancel out. All that's left over in this first distribution is x minus 3. When I do this next distribution here to here, x minus 3 is in the bottom, will cancel with that least common denominator, leaving me 2x plus 5. The best part of all, when I do the last distribution here, the entire denominator matches the least common denominator. So everything cancels, and I'm just left with the numerator. One option. It gets rid of the denominator that a lot of us don't like. And now we're going to do our steps like from part A. Distribute, combine like terms. We'll add all of our x's together. Move them over. I'll get 3x on the left. Add all your constant. Move it to the left. Divide by 3. And I get x is negative 5. Before I circle my answer and call it a day, I have to remember there's denominators with variables. Look back up here. X cannot be negative 5. Otherwise, this term will have a 0 on the bottom, and it will be undefined. So actually, can't be. This is a no solution. Again, if you learned a different way and you feel confident, use that way. Next step here, we're going to solve for x. People get nervous when there's letters. It's the same stuff. Don't overthink it. We're going to get x. What I like to do is put this over 1, and I'm a huge cross multiplier fan. Up to you. You'll be left with ax plus b equals y times that whole denominator. Please make sure you put it in parentheses because you will distribute. Ax plus b, y cx plus yd. Now keep in mind, we're trying to find x, which means if we get x to one side, everything to the other, we're set to go. So I'm going to move this term to the left because it has an x in it. And I'm going to move my b to this side because it did not have an x. Using my factor techniques of a greatest common factor, I'm going to take it out. And then undo this multiplication with division. yd minus b over a minus yc. That is one potential answer. If you did it a different way, maybe you got x to be b minus yd over yc minus a. Both are completely correct. One is flipped with the negative. It doesn't matter. Whatever floats your boat. Okay. Moving on to quadratic equations. A quadratic equation is an equation in one variable that can be written like so. Couple methods we know are factoring, split the middle, square root property, and quadratic formula. So I'm going to go through a couple examples here. If you're feeling confident, keep moving on. Okay, don't be held back. Part A. 8x squared minus 3 equals 10x. First thing we have to do is get into the form above. Big kicker, it has to equal 0. So 8x squared minus 10x minus 3 equals 0. Great. Because this value is not a 1, it's an 8, I cannot just do what adds and multiplies. We'll have to do what's called split the middle, which means take your first term, your last term, multiply them together, and now we look for terms that add to negative 10, multiply to 24. Well, that term would be negative 12x plus 2x. I took this middle term and I just split it into these two terms. Please write everything else. So the 8x squared, the minus 3, and the equal 0. All I did was split that middle term. Now I have 4 terms. When I factor with 4 terms, I like to group. Group these 2 terms together and find the greatest common factor. Well, that would be 4x. 2x minus 3 is left over. And greatest common factor with the next 2 terms. Notice they have nothing in common, so it would just be a plus 1. Hopefully this is sounding familiar that what's left in the parenthesis has to be the same because I'm going to factor it out of both terms. Leaving the first term with just a 4x, second term with a plus 1. Now I have a product that equals 0. So I'm going to perform the zero product property. Set the first term equal to 0, second term equal to 0, and solve. Add 3, divide by 2. Subtract 1, divide by 4. And those are your 2 answers. This is called split the middle, and I did that because of this 8 right here. That was not a 1, so I had to do split the middle. Part B now, looking at it, already equals 0. So I'm already halfway there. Notice I don't have an x term in here. So this might actually be a problem that I should use square root method. It's the most efficient method, which means add 9 to both sides, divide both sides by 4, and you get your squared term by itself. Super important. Get the squared term completely by itself. Then you can take the square root of both sides, leaving the left side with just x and the right side with 3 over 2. Now, huge mistake that people forget. You put in the square root, you need to put in the plus minus. Both of those are potential answers, so you need to write both of them. I'll even leave it in red. That important. Sometimes things don't factor as nicely, so we have to use the quadratic formula, which is right here. There's a lovely song that goes with it, so if you need me to sing it in class, I will. And let's try it out with this problem. First thing we have to remember again, it has to equal 0. So this problem is 2x squared equals 3 minus 4x. I just took that from right there. I need to have it equal 0. It doesn't matter which side you move it to. I'll move everything to the left. Oops, that should be a minus 3 if I move it to the left. And now I can find my a value is 2, b is 4, and c is negative 3. Those go directly into this formula. X equals negative 4 plus or minus 4 squared minus 4 times 2, negative 3, 2 times 2. I just took my A, B, C, plugged it right in here anytime I saw an A, B, or C. Simplifying negative 4. Under the square root, you should get 40. We are going to work on simplifying those radicals. When I mean simplify the radical, it's taking out that largest perfect square of 4. Square root of 4 is 2. And leaving the remainder in the square root. When we simplify always to the very end, I like to think of a heart method. Maybe some of you heard that. If you can take something out from there, please do. Each term has a factor of 2. Take that out. In the end, this would be your simplified answer. It would give me a decimal if I actually put it into the calculator, and that's why I would not be able to factor it like we did above. It wouldn't give us nice factors. 2 more to just give more practice. Option A, because this is a 4, I cannot just do a normal factor. So I can split the middle, or I can use quadratic formula. Looking at this problem, actually, quadratic formula is going to be the best idea. The reason is I cannot find a term, if I multiply these together, -4, that adds to -5. You can keep trying. It just will never happen. Let's treat this then as a quadratic formula. It already equals 0, so A equals 4, B equals -5. Let's plug in and see what we get. Really watch out for those parentheses. Definitely when it's negative and it's being squared, or it's a negative in general, really watch out for that. So we'll have +5. Under here, when you simplify, will be 41. And that's actually as simple as you can get. There is no way I'd be able to actually factor this and get that answer, so I had to do quadratic formula. Part B. You guys are doing great. I know this is a lot, but hopefully it's not too new. Whenever you see a problem, the first thing you should do is try to take out a greatest common factor. Just try. Here, notice there's an x in each term. This then lowers it a power of x, and this is something we definitely can factor now. This is a nice add multiply. What adds to -2 multiplies to -3. -3 plus 1. And now I have a product that equals 0. Set each term equal to 0 like we did at the beginning. And solve. We'll get x equals 0, +3, and -1. Okay, this last part here, we have 4 questions. I'm going to leave this as a challenge. Okay, it could be a partner challenge, a group challenge, an individual challenge. If you got these right, turn them in with proper work, we'll give you some extra points. As a little incentive for it, because you know at the beginning of the year, who really wants extra credit, I'm going to tell you the answer so you can make sure you're right. I need all work. And if you can't get these, this is something that you can ask me in class. Make sure you understand. The first one, your answer should actually be no solution. Ooh, tricky. Number 2, you should get 1/2 and 6. I need both answers. Here, when you solve for x, you should get -3a minus b over a minus b. And for 4, you should get x equals -7/3. Good luck. Ask questions. And let's see who wants some extra credit. Good luck.